Hey, we're back. 3 videos in a row. I'm feeling pretty good about that. Hopefully, we can keep it going. One thing that I've been thinking about, and something that I struggled with recently, and kind of tried to share a little bit about the first video is when you're feeling tired and you're feeling burdened and you're feeling a struggle in what it is that you're doing, and I'm talking about as far as work slash serving, because there's a lot of crossover in what we do. Um, why? Why is that? Because you hear it a lot, especially in working with students in the ministry and with leaders and parents. A lot of burnout, leaving for other careers, or jumping from church to church, thinking it's somehow going to get better. And when I think about scriptures about how Christ has promised us He's come and He's given us life and life to its fullest, and that yes, we're going to have struggles, but He has overcome the world, right? All these things, I get to thinking that somehow it should be different. That yeah, it's going to be hard, but it shouldn't be such a burden that leads us to burnout. And so I have to think that there is probably something in there that we can fix and we can change. In order to be able to continue to go on, because the stakes are high, and the more and more people that get out of serving others, especially students, for the purpose of sharing the gospel with them and helping them grow in their faith, then eventually there's not going to be enough people to meet the need. And back to the whole the harvest is plentiful, but the laborers are few. So what are we going to do? First, I think we have to remember we're not doing this in our own strength. Anything you do, you can't do in your own strength. Be it family, be that marriage, kids, or if you're in the dating relationship phase, you're not quite into the engagement. Those kinds of things. You can't do that on your own. And especially when it comes to work, to ministry, to serving, you cannot do that in your own strength. Maybe you can for a little while. You got some good ideas, some good energy, but eventually it's going to chip away. Sometimes more slowly than others, but eventually it'll catch up to you. So you make sure you're not doing things in your own strength. Bathe each day in prayer. Cling to Scripture and its promises so that you can keep going on a day-to-day basis. So I think that's one thing. Another thing I find, obviously some days are going to be better than others. That's a reality of life. But there are those days where kind of at the end you wonder if you've really accomplished anything. Like it almost feels like, I hate to say a waste, but that's kind of what it feels like. And then unfortunately sometimes those days add up. What I start to wrestle with and realize is maybe you're not doing the right things, okay? And maybe it's because, from outside forces or just in your own mind, you feel like there are certain things that are more important than others, and they shouldn't be. So maybe you get caught up in tracking data and numbers and things like that, or maybe you're spending a lot of time in the office and trying to knock out your to-do list, or maybe there's a ministry down the street who seems to be attracting a lot of students. And it's because, and you think they've got all these games and excitement going, and so I'm going to change what I do to try and match what they do. And it may not be games and excitement; it may be something else. And so what I find is that instead of doing what you're passionate about, what you've been called to do, and how you've been called to do it, you try to match up with somebody else. And so that makes each day, instead of being a blessing and a joy, it becomes a burden. And steadily, you just don't want to do it anymore. I've shared that I got caught up in, power and prestige and projects that I thought would get me praise and importance, titles, things like that. And it let me burden and let me burn out. And so I had to kind of scrap that. And what am I called to do? What am I passionate about? We each do different things in ministry. Obviously we're all called to share the gospel. But I know some of you are extremely gifted in that, in the sense of, your day isn't fulfilled unless you're out there sharing the gospel. And so maybe you need to get back to getting out and doing that more. Maybe you've got wrapped up in, office and events and things like that. So some of you're good at writing, and you enjoy that. You enjoy writing lessons and devotionals, but maybe you allowed yourself to get so busy with other things you thought were important that you don't have time to do that anymore. And so you farm that out somewhere else. And so, I encourage you to think about that. And then maybe you have to think strategically about how can you adjust your days and your schedule in order to get time for those things again. I know that can be hard. My wife and I recently, we were tired, we were worn out, but we go, what do we cut? We looked at our lives and we're doing everything we're supposed to do. And so we just knew it was a busy season, but we could, get a little more disciplined about things, to free up some time for other stuff that we knew was valuable to us. And so, it's the same thing, just kind of think about that. Maybe there's things that you need to cut out of your day, or maybe you just need to restructure to get back to those things you're gifted and passionate about. For example, I've reminded myself recently that I enjoy writing. I do, and I haven't done enough of it lately, and I've learned that when I get back into it, there's a fire that comes into the day, and I actually end up with more time to do everything else because I'm just rejuvenated and I'm energized. And so I need to make a point of that. I've learned that, I've taught myself how to code over the past few years, and it's a valuable skill. But if I'm not using it for the right reasons, it goes from blessing to burden. And so I have to be careful about what sort of projects am I pursuing and taking on. Music is something else that I love. And, I let it go to the wayside because maybe there's just not money in it or whatever. And just realizing that, there's certain things that God places in our lives that we can use, a giftedness, a skill set. But also God's going to use to keep us rejuvenated and spiritually filled. So what are those things for you? And if they're not part of your life, maybe that's one reason you're feeling that sense of burnout and those kinds of issues. So, we start to think about that. We start to make those adjustments. And the big thing, as always, is starting to wrestle with the why. Why is it that I feel this way? Why are these things from day to day that used to be a joy, coming in and not feeling that way anymore? I think, again, I talked about this first video, reminding yourself, why did you do what you do? And at the end of the day, it's about changing students' lives. And it's not going to always be easy. And obviously, it's not about how you exactly want it to go. It's about God's will. And so, thinking about that and keeping that at the forefront. I want to encourage and challenge you, if you are struggling, share in the comments. Let's be a community who can share openly and then, pray and pray for and encourage one another. But, also just begin to wrestle with some of that why. Find people you can talk to and share with, and maybe kind of say, hey, I need some help because these are some things I need, I need back to being part of my life, because I'm on the verge of burnout and I'm on the verge of moving on to something else, and just begin to wrestle with those things because I do believe we are promised an abundant life filled with joy. And yes, there's struggles in that, and yes, there's times of down, but there should always be hope and peace, right, and these other things. And so if those things aren't part of our lives, there's probably something we need to tweak and change. And so, what is it that for you, what is it you can do to make things right again and to get back to that initial feeling you had when you were getting into this? I hope you'll find it. If we can help you find it in some way, I encourage you to do that. Be that helping you reprioritize, schedule, finding your tools, resources, something like that. We'd love to help. Hope you enjoy the rest of your day. It's almost the weekend. For some of you, I know you get tomorrow off, so enjoy that. And we will be talking to you